On July 15, 2022, a game called Project Slayers released to the public, much to the anticipation of the Roblox community. It was expected to be the next big Roblox anime game, something new, something fresh, a finally great and innovative RPG in a sea of low-effort simulators and pay-to-win anime games. YouTubers hyped it up with their videos showcasing different breathings and blood demon arts, showing what appeared to be unique mechanics and enemies. So when the game finally released, did it meet these expectations? Well, not really. For a lot of reasons, Project Slayers turned out to be a classic example of overhyped and underdelivered, ending up as a standard bandit beater that was a far cry away from the fresh new game it was expected to be. In this video, we'll be taking a dive into Project Slayers, examining its gameplay, NPC combat and PvP, as well as the egregious monetization, and figure out where this game stands in comparison to other games on the platform. So without further ado, let's begin the review of Project Slayers. When I first entered Project Slayers, it looked really great actually. The GUI looks amazing, and the animations on both the play and hub page look pretty good, which gave me high hopes for the rest of the game. There's also a very good character customization, with a lot of different outfits, hairstyles, and combinations you can make. I settled on this avatar, which I later changed, but that's besides the point. However, there was one thing that I heavily disliked on first seeing it, and that was the clan system in-game. The thing is that this game has a system where different clans give different buffs, with rare clans giving better buffs, and you can pay to get more spins for these rare clans. The issue is that the difference between these clans is extremely noticeable, with common clans giving no buffs at all, while supreme clans, the best rarity, give... yeah, that's a pretty concerning amount of buffs. This system is definitely extremely pay to win, and would almost certainly cause problems later on, but I'll elaborate on that later on in the video. After sorting all of that out, I entered the game, after which I got teleported to the tutorial. In the tutorial, I was introduced to the basics of the game, and to be honest, the tutorial is alright. The beginning wall of text is a bit dull, but it does its job, and the rest of it shows off some other mechanics quite well. I do wish that the tutorial talked about perfect dodging, evading out of combos, and how to grip or carry players, especially when one of the first quests requires you to carry someone. But the former can be figured out on your own over time, while the latter can be figured out from the keybind settings. Overall, Project Slayers looked like it would be pretty good, and it made me excited to see what would come next. However, it didn't meet those expectations in the actual game. When you first enter the actual game of Project Slayers, you're kind of just thrown to the wind with not much of a clue as to what's going on. After talking to enough NPCs, you'll realize that you can make money and earn XP from grinding quests over and over again. And so, that's what I did. I grinded the same wagon quest and did the 3-quest storyline mission until I had enough money to buy Katana. Then, I grinded some more to reach level 12, and did the wagon quest a million times to get the 5,000 yen I needed for breathing. The beginning of the game was really dull, and made me quickly realize that this game was more of a standard bandit beater than anything else. The first quests you do make you kill bandits, and you have to do these quests over and over again just to get anywhere in terms of progression. But hey, maybe the game just had a rough start? No. It remains the exact same from here on out. You go to your breathing trainer, receive a series of quests that are a bit refreshing at least, do them, fight a boss that's pretty hard for players who don't have any breathing or any kind of moves, though you can just cheese it with friends, and then finally get your first move. However, it takes way more grinding than that just to actually get to use your breathing in combat. See, the issue with breathing in this game is that it charges extremely slow, and you can't move while doing it, with your breathing bar slowly depleting over time if it's not upgraded. This makes it almost impossible to use your moves in a fight unless you either get to some safe spot, charge up your breathing beforehand, or spend an extremely long amount of time grinding to get total concentration, which makes your breathing bar charge up automatically over time. To upgrade your breathing bar, you have to buy and break gourds that'll add to your progress meter, which will upgrade your breathing bar over time. This is extremely costly, and you'll probably end up going over 10,000 yen before being able to actually use your breathing in combat. Of course, this means lots and lots of grinding. More bandit beating, more fetch quests, and more of doing the exact same thing until you finally do it enough to meet your goal. It's a very disappointing surprise when you get your breathing, And even Demon Fall wasn't this bad, as you could at least move while charging your breathing bar, allowing you a limited usage of your moves, but a usage nonetheless. And even then, it just gets worse from here. To actually unlock the rest of your moves, you have to kill enemies with your breathing and get mastery, similarly to 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸. This process is very tedious, and the only reason I don't hate it too much is because you'll get mastery over time as a byproduct of you bandit beating other NPCs. So what's left after you finally do all of that? Well, it's to reach max level, get the best items, and do final selection. I'll start with final selection since it's more interesting. To do final selection, you go to the final selection area and wait until it's time. You can do it with a group as well, which is what I did. In final selection, you basically do a bunch of fetch quests and bandit beating quests until you reach the final quest, which is the 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸𝓢𝓮𝓬𝓽𝓲𝓷𝓼. None of the fetch quests are hard, and you can just look up the item locations. The bandit beating quests, on the other hand, can be a bit risky as you don't regenerate health in final selection, and can only buy bandages from an NPC. After you finish these quests, you'll have to fight the hand demon, which would be a hard boss if not for the fact you can cheese him by standing on a rock. Yeah, it's probably not intended by the developers that you can do this, but hey, if it works, it works. After your auto-clicker finishes killing the boss, you officially become a Slayer, and get an ore that can be used for Roblox products like 2x Mastery or a race reset. This doesn't really mean much, except that you can get a crow which gives you different quests sometimes, and have to wear a uniform that you can only remove by paying. Now that you've become a Slayer, the only thing left to do is reach max level, which is very, very monotonous. If you wanted to do it the most efficient way possible, you'll have to repeat this one quest where you kill demons over and over and over again. These aren't special demons either, just slightly stronger M1 zombies. It's horribly monotonous, and I quit grinding after a while just out of sheer boredom. This, however, is the gameplay of players who decide to become a Slayer. If you decide to become a demon instead, it's a slightly different, but by no means better, process. If you want to become a demon, you'll have to first reach level 15, and then look for a Muzan NPC that spawns in a random location each night. Then, you'll have to do his quest, which involves bringing him an NPC that's located inside a house, and collecting 5 flowers that spawn randomly anywhere across the map. After you've done that, he'll give you his blood, and if you're lucky, drinking it will make you a demon. That's right, it's not a guaranteed chance, so if you're unlucky, you'll have to find another Muzan and do the whole quest again just for another chance at becoming a demon. And that's not where the RNG ends. To obtain your Blood Demon art, you'll have to spin it at an NPC, and if you get lucky, you'll get the one you want. Pretty much everything about being a demon is related to RNG. Unless you have a game pass, finding Muzan is RNG, and if you have bad RNG, you'll have to find Muzan all over again because the blood failed. And if you're lucky enough to both find Muzan and have the blood succeed, then you'll still have to be lucky enough if you're going to get the Blood Demon art you want. All of these processes require luck, just to become a demon. Sure, you don't have to deal with bandit beating quests to get money for your Blood Demon art, but I'd hardly call having to rely on luck favoring you any better. Both the demon and Slayer paths are flawed in their own ways, and lead to very frustrating or boring gameplay depending on which path you choose. But that's not even where the RNG ends. There's something I haven't talked about yet that's important for both paths of progressions, and that's items. In Project Slayers, there's many different items, with accessories that give you varying amounts of health and different swords that deal more damage depending on their rarity. So, how do you obtain these items? Well, with the exception of the 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸 mask, which you have to buy with Robux, and the claws, which you get by giving 200 demon horns to an NPC, they're all obtained randomly from chests, with better items having a rarer rate of drop. The two best items in the game, the straw hat and the insect katana, both have a 0.5% chance of dropping, meaning you'll be killing a lot of bosses if you want to obtain the best loot. On top of that, to unlock your breathing's ultimate ability, you have to kill a specific boss and pray that they'll drop their skill, because it's not a guaranteed chance. I think it's pretty obvious why having RNG be a central component of your game is a bad thing, mainly because everyone's experience ends up being different. For example, one person could become a demon and get every item they need in a couple hours, while for someone else, it'd take days or weeks of grinding to get the items they need and their ultimate skill. So how would these problems of bandit beating and RNG be fixed? Well, for the issue of the game being too much of a bandit beater, I think this could be alleviated by adding some kind of storyline where the player could progress naturally, rather than forcing them to repeat the exact same fetch quests and murder quests to get XP and money. The trials that you have to do to obtain your breathing are decently fun, and I'd have liked to see more of that in game rather than the simple repetitive quests we have now. There's even a little bit of this at the beginning of the game, with some of these quests having a storyline for them, though it quickly becomes boring after you've done it a lot of times. This could be done for both demons and slayers, kind of like what Demonfall did, but better. As for how to deal with the issue of RNG being a central factor in the game, you can make more items obtainable through guaranteed means. The claws are an example of this, and though I'm not fond of the large requirement, it is an example of an item that's obtainable through guaranteed means. Having quests similar to the ones you have to do for your breathing as a way to obtain Hawaioris and katanas could be interesting, and make gameplay more engaging. Also, removing the chance for Muzen's blood to fail would help to deal with the frustration of becoming a demon. RNG isn't always a bad thing, but it can ruin a game when it becomes a central component. Project Slayer's gameplay is flawed, but there are some good aspects to it, as well as a lot of changes that could be made to make it better. However, these aren't the only issues in the game, which brings me to my next point. So now that I've discussed the gameplay of Project Slayers, you're probably wondering what the other parts of it are like, such as the NPC combat and mechanics. Well, it's a mixed bag, with some good and some bad. Let's start out with the good. Some of Project Slayer's mechanics are pretty cool on paper. There's climbing, a unique combo mechanic that makes use of the left and right mouse buttons, and an evasive mechanic which works decently well for eliminating 100 to 0 combos. There's also perfect blocking, and a new mechanic called perfect dodging, with both being fairly useful in their own respective scenarios. However, after that, there's not really much left to say. A lot of these really cool mechanics end up being pretty useless. That unique combo mechanic? Yeah, it doesn't really ever do anything unless you're using insect katana. How about the climbing mechanic? Also useless since you won't have to climb much to traverse the map. There are some cool ideas in the game, but because they're executed poorly, you never do anything except maybe add some extra style points for players who want to mess around. So how could this be fixed? Well, adding different purposes for each different combo could be a good idea. Fists and Insect Katana have that, since doing a certain combo will trigger a barrage that could be useful in some scenarios. If everything had something like this, such as a unique LR combo that triggered a wind-up guard break or an attack with more knockback, then the system would actually be used rather than being forgotten about by everybody. As for climbing, this mechanic could easily be made more useful by making areas where climbing is actually needed. Maybe there could be a house high up on a mountain, or something similar. The possibilities are pretty much endless for what you could add to the map. Now what about perfect blocking and perfect dodging? Well, those two mechanics are very similar, but have some notable differences. Perfect blocking is the same as it is in any other game. If you block an attack at the right time, your opponent gets stunned for a while. However, perfect dodging is different, and activates if you time a dodge before getting hit. The window for doing a perfect dodge is noticeably much smaller than the window for a perfect block, and it's very hard to land one except for when you're spamming dash to try and escape from a combo. Both mechanics actually work well enough, and I don't mind them too much, so that's a positive for the game. However, there is one last notable set of mechanics I'd like to mention, and that's how blocking works. Blocking has two distinctive properties to it, and it's the block bar as well as the ability to go behind block. First, the block bar. The way the block bar works is that it limits your block to only be able to tank a certain amount of damage before it breaks. This system generally works fine, though it can be problematic when fighting bosses or high level players at a low level, since it can usually do enough damage to guard break you with attacks that would normally be blockable. However, despite this, I wouldn't do anything to this mechanic, as removing it might cause more problems than it solves. The other mechanic that revolves around blocking is the ability to go behind block, which works well sometimes, but can be very problematic in PvP and boss fights. The reason for this being problematic? It's moves that move the user around like Water Wheel or Speed Rush. Under normal circumstances, these moves are blockable, and that's the only way to really avoid them due to their speed and large hitbox. However, because you can go behind block, these moves end up being impossible to avoid, and it really shows when fighting Sabito or Kaden, who both spam Water Wheel or Claw Spin like there's no tomorrow. There is a fix to this, however, and it's to do what 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸 did and disable this property for different moves. Abilities such as Water Wheel could have their ability to go behind block removed, which would remove the issue of those moves being free damage, while also keeping this mechanic in place as a countermeasure for dealing with block. The mechanics in Project Slayers aren't all bad, but there's definitely a lot of improvement that could be made, whether to make the game more smooth, or to make these mechanics actually useful. Now that we've discussed the mechanics, let's move on and talk about the bosses and NPCs in Project Slayers. When you're making a game, one of the most important aspects is the enemies that the player has to fight. Good NPC combat can make or break a game, and it can be disastrous if done wrong. That's why it's a good thing that the enemies in Project Slayers meet the standard. They're not exceptional or particularly entertaining, but they aren't game-breakingly annoying either. The basic NPCs in this game are simple M1 zombies that occasionally block or do a special M1 combo. They're not very sophisticated, but they're a small step up from the NPCs that can only walk forward and attack, which you'll normally see in an RPG. As for bosses, they're pretty much the same as regular NPCs with some key differences. Bosses, as per usual, have a lot more damage and health than normal NPCs, and also have 2 moves which you can spam without any cooldown. This move spamming can be an extremely annoying feature though, and I'd much rather prefer the bosses have 3 to 4 attacks with cooldowns on them, rather than 2 attacks that can be spammed endlessly. However, it's not too big of an issue, and more of a small nitpick, though it can be very annoying against certain bosses with skills that are hard to avoid. Overall, the NPC combat of this game is fine. It's not exceptional, but it's not subpar either, and though I'd have liked for there to be more engaging enemies, the NPCs currently in the game serve their role well enough. Now that we're done talking about PvE though, it's time to move on to one of the more interesting aspects of the game, which is the PvP, and boy is this a bit of a mess. So, Project Slayers PvP, in the simplest way possible, is messy. And there's a lot of reasons for this being the case. Everything having some crazy infinite combo, clans being pay to win, ultimates essentially being free combos, the list goes on and on. Yes, there's a little bit of good to be found in the PvP, but it is heavily outweighed by a lot of negatives. So let's start out with what's good. The combos can be satisfying to pull off sometimes. There's an evasive mechanic that stops combos from going on for too long. Some of the mechanics can be pretty interesting, and it can be fun to stomp on people if you're using something unbalanced. After that, there's not really much else to say. The first issue of PvP, and probably the most glaring one, is the blatant pay-to-win aspect of clans. In Project Slayers, your character starts off with a random clan that gives buffs depending on how rare it is. You can get more spins through Robux or sometimes codes. Now, let's compare to common clans, which have a 74% chance of being obtained, to the Supreme clans, which have a very small chance of 0.1% or 1 out of 1,000 chance of being rolled. The buffs that the common clans give you are none. Literally nothing. Common clans have nothing except for a name for people to laugh at, and if you're unlucky enough to end up with one, you might as well just make an alt account and try again. But hey, if the common clans give nothing, then the Supreme clans can't be that overpowered, right? Nope. The list of buffs for the Supreme clans are like a college essay and extend to the moon. Heck, Kamino is already extremely overpowered, and it's not even finished yet. I'll just read off both of the Supreme clan's buffs to give you an idea of how stupidly broken they are. The buffs for the 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸 clan are a unique Godspeed mode for Thunder Breathing users, a free combo starter / extender, enhanced speed, plus 30 health if you're in a party with a Kamino clan, 2 extra strength, 110 extra stamina, 125 extra health, 1 extra sword stat, and 1 extra block point. Meanwhile, the buffs for the Kamino clan are 3 extra strength, 125 extra stamina, 140 extra health, 3 extra sword stat, 3 extra weapon stat, which is basically the same thing, 3 block power points, faster breathing bar regeneration, pain resistance, which makes it so you don't lose speed at low health, enhanced speed, a free combo starter / extender, the unique ability to see other players' item HP, an HP regeneration skill if you're a demon, double stamina regeneration if you're a demon, free sunlight immunity for demons without needing the straw hat, and when it's completely finished, a unique sun breathing mode. I think it's pretty obvious why this is a problem, because pay to win in any game is never a good thing. Things like 2 times XP or cosmetics are fine, since all they really do is speed up progression or give the player something to flex without giving them any advantages that other players can't make up for. However, the clan system is very obviously not something that can be made up with grinding or skill, and is really more just a way to encourage players to spend money on the game. Clans that give buffs have always been a problem in any game, whether it be Demonfall or Project Slayers. So how could this issue be fixed? Balancing. Nerfing the Supreme clans to be good, but not brokenly overpowered, would remedy the issue somewhat, while still heavily encouraging people to spend money, which is probably what the devs want. If you really want to make a balanced game though, making all the clans equal in terms of buffs, but having different clans boost different stats, would make the game more balanced. This, however, would remove the incentive for people to spend Robux, so it is extremely unlikely the devs would take this route. There's one more solution to the clan problem, however, and that's to just remove it altogether. This is probably the easiest, but also least effective solution, and would cause a lot more community uproar than it would solve. So I really don't recommend this path of action. Now that we've talked about clans, let's discuss the other issues that PvP has. One of those being some pretty poorly designed moves. In specific, ultimates in this game are problematic. As a reminder of what these are, ultimates are the moves that you unlock by killing a specific boss and getting lucky. And they're all pretty stupid. Free combo, free combo, free combo, free combo, another free combo, oh hey, this is a combo reset. Kinda means nothing considering the rest of Blood Explosion's kit is full of free combos. Another free combo, and either a close range free combo or a combo ender depending on how you use it. Real nice. On top of that, there's moves like Speed Rush and Water Wheel, which I wish you good luck with avoiding. Yeah, they're blockable, but they activate almost instantly and can go behind block very easily. There's a lot of issues with how some things work in Project Slayers, and this video would go on way too long if I addressed all of them. So I'll just address a few of the issues. First, for ultimates, it'd be better if there was a requirement to use it, such as a 30 seconds or a bar you'd have to fill up by doing damage. This would make it less of a free combo at the start of a match, and more of a trump card. Even though this doesn't address the issue of these ultimates being free combos, it's an easier solution than redoing all of the ultimate abilities, which would just be impractical. Also, like I said before, making it so only some moves can go behind block would fix the issue of Water Wheel and Speed Rush being unavoidable by a lot. PvP can be fun, but there are a lot of issues that make it feel less like a fight and more of a stat check. If you take away those issues and left the core mechanics in place, PvP might actually be pretty good. Like a lot of things in the game, it's flawed, but definitely capable of improving. Now, let's move on to the final and probably most pressing issue, which is the monetization. Okay, so one look at the Game Pass store for Project Slayers should probably be enough to figure out that the game is very heavily monetized. To be specific, there's 14 Game Passes in total for sale. Now some of these are fine. Customizing your 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸 or setting your spawn wherever you want? Nothing wrong with that. Mere conveniences that you can buy which don't matter much in the end. However, there are a pretty concerning amount of products that do give advantages which can't be made up for, and are required if you want to become the strongest. One of those we went over was clans, and since we already discussed how pay to win those were, I won't waste your time discussing it all over again. But they're definitely an example of why being able to get massive advantages with money is a bad thing. There are, however, some other things besides clans that are pay to win as well. You can buy a mask which is unobtainable through other means for 250 Robux that both gives a specific clan a buff and gives you 60 HP. As a reminder of just how much HP this is, Hyoris, which give the most HP out of all the obtainable items, only give you 50 HP. And that's not all, because you can buy a Muzan notifier for 600 Robux, which if you remember how lucky you have to be to actually find him and have his blood not fail, is basically a requirement to become a demon. If you don't have a friend with this Game Pass, or don't have it yourself, then good luck becoming demon without spending lots of time server hopping and searching. You even need to pay money to see how much progress you've made towards total concentration. Though admittedly, this Game Pass is a bit useless, since you can just keep using Gorth until you get it. Monetization isn't always a bad thing, but once you step into the territory of pay to win, that's where monetization becomes a problem, and a serious one at that. The solution to this problem is obvious. Remove or balance these Game Passes so that they aren't required to become strong. The only question here is whether or not the developers are willing to take this step, and honestly, I'd understand if they didn't. Pay to win, while it ruins the experience for free-to-play players, is an absolute cash cow that lets developers benefit from whatever whales like Fredweeb decide to spend 20,000 Robux for 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸. So whether or not this issue will be fixed is completely up to the developers, and only time can tell if they're willing to take that step to make a good game. So, in the end, with all of this in mind, it's time to come to a conclusion about Project Slayers. And my final opinion on it is that it's pretty good for a bandit beating RPG, but definitely not an exceptional game that stands out on the Roblox platform. The graphics are great, and the people who worked on the visuals for Project Slayers have my praise. The issues only start to pop up though when you look deeper into Project Slayers as a game and examine its core features. The fact that it's based around RNG for many things, and has a very repetitive, grindy path of progression without anything to really keep it interesting, does definitely dampen the game. Its glaring pay-to-win issues are also a massive problem that may be hard to fix without taking away a lot of the game's monetization. Even PvP has a lot of issues that need to be addressed, though some of them are just because of other problems in the game. However, this doesn't mean the game is hopeless, because there are ways to improve it. And if these problems were to be fixed, I could definitely see Project Slayers being a phenomenal game, not just by the standard of Roblox, but by the standard of games in general. Project Slayers isn't finished yet, so there's a good chance that the things I've mentioned in this video may be fixed in later updates. Only time can tell though, and if I were to rate Project Slayers on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a disaster and 10 being a masterpiece, I'd place it at around a 6.5, with great graphics and some interesting ideas, but lots of problems that make the gameplay boring. If you want to see more content from me, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you're notified about new uploads. Also, feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it. With that being said, I'm 𝓥𝓲𝓭𝓮𝓸, and that's the end of the review. Thanks for watching.